Hi there, in this video we are going to build authentication server from scratch. We are going to use Nodejs, Express Server, MongoDB for the database and some other NPM libraries like bcrypt.js for encrypting password so that it goes in the form of encryption when we are going to store password in our database, and some other libraries like JWT for getting the access token and all of that. So before moving forward, I'm going to show you a small demo. So we will be basically building all these API routes that you see in my Postman. We're going to build sign up route, login route, get all users API route, which is going to be protected. Basically, you'll be able to only call this API if you're logged in. And then we have logout functionality to basically log out the user, right? So let me show you the sign up API route. Its link is /auth/signup, and it's gonna take this these parameters in the body. We will be providing name, email, and password. And when we are going to hit send button over here, it's going to interact with our Node.js server, and that Node.js server will basically take all this information, and it's going to obviously do verification first whether this email address exists or not. And if it does not exist, it's going to create a user in our MongoDB database, right? So let's hit this send button, and as you can see, our user got created. We got 201 status code and our user got created, and we got this information in the response, right? So let's try to log in using this. So we are going to use this same email in our next API route, which is going to let us log in. So let's try that. So if I pass here in the email my email which I created in the previous sign up route, and the password is 1234. If I hit on send button, okay, so I'm gonna get the same information, right, along with the access token, right? So whenever user logs in successfully, we are going to get one access token here in the response, and also it's going to set this access token in your cookie. So basically, whenever you make a new request to a new API route, this cookie will automatically be passed to all your API requests. And we're going to also learn how you can manage cookies and how you can basically verify cookie for all your protected resources, right? So let's say you pass wrong password. What's going to happen? It's basically going to say that invalid credentials, right? And let's say you pass an email address which does not even exist. It's going to say that user with that mail does not exist. Please sign up first, right? So we're going to add those validations as well. Let me sign in again. So yeah, after you sign in successfully, it's going to give you access token, and it's going to set up access token in cookies as well, which you can check from here as well. Now let's make the request to our protected resource. This third API is our protected resource. Basically, you won't be able to call this API if you are not logged in. So in this step, we logged in, right? And cookie was set. Now let's try to call this API. So API route is /auth/get all users. If we hit on send button, it's going to give you a list of all the users, which basically created, which basically signed up in our application, right? Let's imagine we don't have this cookie, right? We basically just remove this, let's say, last character. And if I save it, so basically in this case, what I'm doing is I'm making my cookie invalid. I'm making my access token invalid. So if I send the request, you will see that you're not authorized to make this request. Please log in first. So what you can do is you can log in again. It's gonna give you new access token and set a new cookie in your cookie, which you can see from here. And if you try to call this API again, you will be able to get the list as usual, right? So in this way, we are going to make this protected resource as well, which is going to validate cookie, right? So the last API is logout functionality. So it's basically a simple post request, and it does not take any parameters. You just call this, and what it's going to do is it's going to send API request to a Node.js server, and that will basically show you that message that you're logged out, and it will set the auth cookie to an empty value, right? You can also check it from here. Your cookie has been deleted. So if you try to call this get all users API again, you won't be able to make the call because you're not logged in, right? So in this video, we are going to create this authentication server from scratch using Node.js, Express, and MongoDB. So let's get started. Okay, let me open up my terminal. we are going to create an empty directory where we will initialize our Nodejs project. You can type mkdir, project name will be authentication v1. Let's go to this directory. You can type cd authentication v1, initialize Nodejs project. You can type npm init -y. Great. So let me open up my VS Code. And the first step which we need to do is we need to install the libraries which we are going to need. First library is Express for creating APIs. Second is Mongoose, which will help us to interact with MongoDB. Then we need bcrypt for encryption and decryption. And we need JSON Web Token for handling tokens like access token or refresh access token. And then we need cookie parser for interacting with cookies, right? As far I remember, I need only these libraries. If we require any other library in the future, we will install at that time. So let me click enter. It will install all these libraries. Okay, I missed writing npm install. So we need to write the install keyword. Great. So it will install all the libraries which we need. Now the next step which we need to do is we need to set up the startup script, right? So inside package.json, you will see we don't have any script which is going to start our script. So let's give it name start. And inside this, we are going to start our server. We are going to use Nodemon for that. And it's going to start our server from source.index.ts file. And also we are going to use TypeScript in this project. So let's create this directory first. So in root directory, you can create a folder. Its name will be source. And here we are going to create one file. Its name will be index.ts. Let me write something here to check whether our start script is running or not. So you can write anything over here like server is running. Great. So how do we run this file? For that we wrote this script, right? But Nodemon is not installed. So let's install that first. You can write npm i -t Nodemon. So -t is basically used for installing the library in development mode, right? So you can press enter and it will install the Nodemon library. So let's try running this start script. To run this start script, we can write npm start and let's see. So it's not running. It's giving us that ts node execution was not found. So that means we need to install this library as well. So why does it require this? Because we are writing all our code in TypeScript, right? As you can see, extension is .ts. So that's why we need ts node to run TypeScript files. So you can write npm i -d ts node. So after this is installed, you will be able to run your start script. You can write npm start. And as you can see over here, your server is running, right? And the main advantage of using Nodemon is that if you make any changes inside any of your file, server automatically starts or server automatically refreshes, you can say. So let's say I type some code over here, which prints something else, right? Let's say changes. And if you click save, your Nodemon server will automatically refresh and you will see latest changes, right? So that's the advantage. Great. So let's initialize our Express server. So you can write import Express from Express, and we need to initialize our Express server. You can write const app is equal to Express. Great. Let's try to assign some port to our server. You can write app.listen. Also, you can see we are not getting IntelliSense. To get the IntelliSense, what you can do is we need to install types for all the libraries which we're going to use. So we are using all these libraries, so we need to install types as well for all these. So let me delete my server or cut my server. Now we need to install types. You can write npm i -t, and we need types for Express. We need types for JSON Web Token. We need types for Mongoose. We need types for, okay, we have cookie parser as well. So you can write /cookie parser. And we need types for, which one is remaining? Bcrypt. You can write bcrypt. So it will install all the types which are required for all these libraries. So the advantage of this is that it will provide you IntelliSense over here, and that will help you write code faster, right? So you can write app dot, as you can see, we are getting a lot of helpers, or you can say basically this is IntelliSense, and it's suggesting you that all these properties are available inside this, and which you can use basically. Okay, it helps you to write code faster actually. So you can write app.listen, and great. So the first parameter, it will take the port, and second, you can pass the callback function, and here you can type anything which you want to print. So we will write server is running on port. So this is running on port. You can, okay, we haven't initialized this variable. Let's initialize this variable. So you can write const port. Let's say we want to initialize our server on 3000 port, right? And also we need to include this in this syntax, so that we will be able to use this dollar curly braces over here, right? So let me save it and let me start the server. You can write npm start, and as you can see, our server is running on port 3000. Great. Now we need to initialize API routes. Okay, so let's first organize our directory structure over here. So we need one routes directory where we will implement all our routes, right? We need one directory for controllers where all our controller functions will go, right? And we need one directory to store our schemas. Great. And we need one directory to handle our middlewares, which we will make in future, right? I think this one is fine. So let's create our first route. So its name will be authentication.ts. Great. So first thing which you need to do is you need to import Express from Express library, and let me create one router. You can give it name auth router equal to express.router, and now you can implement methods. So you can write auth router dot let's say get. So whenever you make a get request on, let's say, test, we want to print something, let's say. Okay, so the two parameters which go inside callback, as you can see, the first is request and the second is response. And for now I just want to send something, so I can write res.send test API route is working. Okay, this we are doing just to make sure that our server is working fine. Great. We also need to import this, export this. So you can write export default auth router. Great. Now how do we use this router? You can go inside your source index.ts file, and here you can write app.use, and whenever we go to /auth, we want to use our auth router. Great. It's automatically imported over here, as you can see. Now let me go to my Postman, and here I'll create one new request, and whenever I make a request to /auth/test, it should send us something, right? As you can see in our VS Code, yeah, whenever we go to /test, we need to, like, we're basically getting this in the response, right? So let's see whether we are getting this or not. So if I click enter over here, as you can see, test API route is working. So that means our Express API server is working. So let's create, okay, let me just delete this. We don't need this. That was just for testing. So the first method which we will be needing is post method, and this will go to /signup. Okay, so the first API route which we are going to build is /signup, which is going to help user to register the user, right, in our MongoDB database. So you can write /signup, and it's going to call some function. Let's give it name register user, right? And second route which we're going to build is /login, that will help user to log in. So it will call a login user function, right? And we also need one more function, or one more API route, you can say. It will be logout, and it will call logout function. right? We haven't created all these functions, and we will create these functions inside the controllers directory. So let's go there, and you can create one file over here inside controller directory. Its name will be auth.ts. Okay, so the first function which we need is, as you can see, we need register user. So let's create that, and it will take request and response. For now, I'm just gonna print something, register API working. Similarly, let's create a login user. It will take again same parameter. You can write console.log login API working. And the last thing which we need is and the last thing which we need is logout function. It's going to again take same request and res, and let's print logout API is working. Great. So you need to export all these functions so that you will be able to use it inside your routes file. So you can write export, and we need all these functions. So you can write the names of their here in the curly braces, right? So with this way, you will be able to use this these functions in another file. So let me press control space, and you can click on this. It'll automatically import this, right? Great. So you can also test this whether it is working or not. And we are getting some error regarding TypeScript. So what you need to do is, as you can see, these request and res, they are not having any types. So we need to define that. So what you can do is you can write import express from express, and request will be having type express dot request, and this one will be having type express dot response, right? Let me just copy this and paste it in all the functions like this. Great. Let's save it, and all these errors will go away now. And let's try this whether it is working or not. So if I click on sign up, it should say okay, although you won't see something over here, it will be in a constant loop. It will not basically send you any successful request, because we are just only logging into the console, because here, as you can see, we are only printing something, right? So that means our API is working, right? If you click on login as well, you should see something in your console that login API is working. So that means our API routes are working. Now the next thing which we need to do is we need to create the functionality for register user. Okay, so the first thing which we need to do is we need to get name, email, and password from request.body. Okay, so as you can see in the demo when I showed you, the sign up API is going to take 3 parameters in the body. First is name, email, and password. So let's first retrieve these properties in our function. So you can retrieve with this line of code. So from the request.body, I'm fetching these 3 properties, right? Now the next thing which I need to do is, I'll keep writing comments over here. What we need to do is, so the first thing which we need to do is we need to validate email if it exists or not. Okay, so wait. So if this email exists, what we need to do is, if it exists, we need to raise error that this email already exists, right? Because we want user to register unique emails, right? It should not be like if you have registered some user over here and you are able to register the same user again and again with the same email, right? We don't want that. So that's why we want to add some validation over here, right? And if everything goes well, if email is new and unique, what we want to do is we need to encrypt the password, right? because we don't want to store the plain password in our MongoDB database, right? So we will be encrypting the database and we will save the user info in MongoDB, right? And return status code 201 with the user information in response. Great. So we need to do these things whenever user registers, and let's write comments for login user as well. What we're going to do is, so the first thing which we need to do is we need to fetch email and password from requested body, right? As you can see in my Postman in login API, we provide 2 parameters. So that's why we are fetching this. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to validate if email is valid or not, right? So we are going to make a request in our MongoDB database and we are going to check whether this email has user created or not, right? And after validation is successful, we need to validate the password. If the password provided by user matches with the database password or not. If everything goes well, we need to generate access token, and we need to set that access token in the cookie, right? And we need to send status code 200 with the user info along with access token, right? So only these things we need to do in a login API. And logout feature is very simple. We just need to delete the cookie or make cookie empty and send status code 200 with message logged out. Great. So I've written comments to basically help us write the code faster, right? So let's create first register user functionality. Before moving forward, we are going to create a cluster in our MongoDB website. So you can go to Chrome and let me go to MongoDB Atlas website. If you don't have an account over here, you can create a new account and you need to create one new project over here. Let's click on new project and we will give it name auth v1. Click on next, click on create project. So it's going to take some time, and until then what we can do is we can go to database and you can click on build a database. Let's select the free version and let's select the nearest region. So in my case, nearest region is Mumbai. We can give any name to this cluster. Let's give it name cluster test and let's click on create, right? So it's going to take some time, and until then what we can do is we can create a username and password with which we are going to access this database. So for now I'm going to give test123 and password also same, test123. Great. Click on create user and here you can type 0.0.0.0/0. So by this what we are actually doing is that this database will be accessible from any IP address. That's why you need to add this entry. Great. And click on finish and close. Okay, so as you can see, they are deploying our changes. So it's going to take some time. So let's wait for that time. And also in the meantime, we can copy the connection string. You can go to connect button and here you can go to MongoDB for VS Code and you can copy this. So in your VS Code, what you can do is you can go to, okay, let's create one environment variable, environment file over here. You can go in your root directory and create one new file. Its name will be .env. And we will store one variable over here. Its name will be MongoDB URL. It will store the URL which we just copied, and you need to update the password over here, and our password is same. Let's save it. Okay, so how would we access this environment variable in our source file? Right, so for that we need to install .env library. So you need to write npm i.env. Okay, so after it is installed, you need to import this. You can write import.env config. Right now you will be able to access all the environment variables which you have declared over here in this file. Right, so let's try to connect to our MongoDB. What you can do is you can write mongoose. Okay, so it automatically imports the mongoose library, and you can write mongoose.connect. Inside this I'll write process.env dot, what was the name of our environment variable? It was MongoDB URL. You can copy this and you can paste it over here. Right, so after it is connected successfully, we want to show some message in the console that MongoDB was connected successfully. Right, so you can write connected to MongoDB successfully. Right, and if anything fails during our connectivity, you can basically console it, log it in the console. Right, so you can write console.error. Okay, so we are getting some error over here. Okay, so you need to write as string, because this connect function expects the URL string, right? And in TypeScript you need to define the type, so that's why we're writing this. Okay, so let's first test this, whether it is working fine or not, whether we are able to connect to a MongoDB server or not. Okay, so you can start the server again. You can write npm start, and as you can see, we are getting connected to MongoDB successfully. That means we are able to make the connection. Right, now we need to define some schemas for our MongoDB database. So when we click on sign up, right, so this is going to basically store this information in some table, right, in MongoDB. So for that we need to define first schema. So inside your schemas directory, you can create one file. Its name will be user.ts, and let's import mongoose over here. And you can write const user schema new mongoose schema. Okay, so the first property which you need is obviously name. It will be string. Then we need email, which will also be string. Then we need to store password. Right, we will store it in some another property. You can write authentication. Inside this we are going to store password, and its type will be again string. And the next property which we want to store inside authentication will be access token. Right, again its type will be string. Great, so we have created our schema. Now we need to create model out of it. So you can write const user mongoose dot model, and inside this you can give any name. I'll give user, and the second parameter which goes is the schema which we just created. You can pass user schema. Right, and I just need to export this. You can write export default user. So by exporting, you will be able to use this model anywhere inside any file. Right, great. We need to make one small change. Let's imagine you are retrieving all the users information. So by default, all these properties which you have defined, it will come in the response, but we don't want to fetch the password and access token information. Right, so basically what I'm trying to say is, whenever user makes a request to fetch all the users information, these properties will also come, which we don't want in the final response. So what you can do is you can write here select false. Similarly here as well, select false. So by writing this, what we are trying to say is that whenever someone makes a request to our schema, we don't want to receive this information. We only want to receive name and email. Right, great. So let's go to let's go to our controller function, and here we will validate whether this email exists in our existing database in MongoDB or not. Right, so what you can do is you can write const user exists. Let's import our user model. You can write import user from models schemas user. Great, so you can write await user dot find one, and we need to find user where email matches with the same email that we are getting in the request body, right? So either you can write it like this, or you can just ignore this, right? This is the beauty of JavaScript, right? And also we are using await, so you need to write async over here, right? So with this line of code, what we're doing is we are fetching the user from the MongoDB where email matches with this email which user has passed in the request body. So if we're getting an email, what we want to do is, if user exists, we want to return res.status 400, and we need to write that user with this mail already exists. Provide another name, provide another email. Okay, great. So we have applied our validation, and okay, let's say our user does not exist. That means email is unique. So if email is unique, what we want to do is, the first thing which we need to do is we need to encrypt the password. So you can write const hashed password. You can use bcrypt for it. Let's first import it. So you can write import bcrypt from bcrypt library, and you can write bcrypt dot hash sync, and you can provide your password. It will be password, and for the next parameter you can give any value. Let's give it maybe 12, right? So you can also keep this value in your environment variable. Okay, so after password is hashed, what we want to do is we need to save all the user information in our MongoDB database. So you can write const new user, new user, and inside this you can pass curly braces, and inside this object you can pass all the information which you want to store in your user schema. So the first thing which we need to store is name, next is email, and second is password. So inside password we need to keep the hashed password which we just hashed here, right? Great. And to save it, we need to write new user dot save, right? You can also write await as well because it will be asynchronous. Now after user is saved, we just need to send the status code 201 along with some message like user account has been created, right? And you can also send the user object, right? So you can write user new user. Okay, so basically you will see a message and also a user object in your final response, right? So let's test this whether register user is register user is working or not. So let's go to Postman, and inside so here you can write localhost 3000/auth/signup, and inside body inside JSON you can pass this object, right? So okay, so I provided this dummy value. You can provide any value. Let's pass my name Yatharth, and I'll pass my email address which is a dummy one, and for password I'll pass 123456. Okay, so if I click enter, as you can see, first code, what will happen? So first it will try to validate it. If everything goes well, it's going to hash the password and it's going to store this user information in MongoDB. Let's see whether it is working fine or not. Okay, if I click send, we got some error. Let's see what's the error and we will solve it. So as you can see, we are not able to destructure name out of the request body because request.body is coming undefined. So why it is happening that it is happening because Express is not able to parse the request.body by default. So for that, what we need to do is, let's go back to our initial script file source/index.ts, and here you need to write app.use. Okay, so let's import body parser from body parser. Okay, and here you need to write body parser.json. Okay, so with this line of code, your Express server will be able to parse request.body. Great. So let's test it now. If I click on send button, as you can see, your user account was created successfully and you got the user information, right? And this is the ID which MongoDB provides whenever it creates a new record in its database, right? So let's also verify this in MongoDB Atlas. You can go to Chrome, and if I go to database and inside collection, you should be able to see your new user which we just got created, right? So inside this users collection, you can see our information was stored successfully. Inside authentication, you should also be able to see the hashed password. So that means sign up is working successfully. Great. So let's create a login API now. In this, we are going to pass these two information. First is email and second is password. So inside, let me close all the tabs, and in auth.ts controller file, we have another function which is going to help us log in, right? So the first thing which we need to do is we need to validate whether this email exists in our database or not. Okay, so you can write const user exists. You can write await user.find1, and we want to find by email, right? So we need to also make this function asynchronous because we are using await. Great. So if this user exists, what we need to do is, so if user exists, okay, so the first thing which we need to do is, if this user does not exist, that means you need to first register that user, right? So you can write a return res dot status 400 dot send. I'll send the message that user with this mail does not exist. Create this user first, using Signup API. Great. And if let's say this user exists, we need to match the password which user has provided, right? Because user can pass any password over here, right? We also need to verify that this password is correct or not. So what you can do is you can write const password match. You can write bcrypt dot compare sync, and here the password which user has provided, this one, it will go. So the first parameter will be this one, which we have accessed from request.body in this line, and the second will go the encrypted one, right? So you can access it using user exists dot authentication dot password, right? You need to also explicitly write it as string. Great. So after password comparison is done successfully, it's going to return you a boolean value, true or false. It's going to be stored in this variable. So if password does not match, that means user has provided wrong password. So we are going to return res.status 401, which is used for not authorized. You can write invalid credentials, right? Now if let's say password also matches successfully, we want to generate access token, right? So you can write token JWT. Okay, so let's import the JWT library. So you can write import JWT from JSON web token, and here you can write JWT dot sign, and here you can provide a payload which you want to sign. So in our case, let's say I just want to sign ID. Great. So it will be explicitly turned to string, because the first parameter it expects it should be string or object or buffer, as you can see. And the next thing will be a secret. So we are going to store that secret in our environment variable. So you can write app underscore secret. So let me store this in my environment variable, environment file. So you can go here, you can create a new variable, and you can store any string over here. Let's give it name node auth secret, right? Let me restart my server because we have made a change in environment file, right? So can I hit npm start again, and we're getting some error. It is related to TypeScript, so we need to write as string. Great. We are also getting some error over here. Conversion of type object ID to type string may be a mistake. Okay, so we can't directly convert this as a string, so we need to Enclose this in bracket, and you need to write capital string. Great. So with this line of code, we are able to generate an access token where we are providing a user ID as a payload, and we are signing it corresponding to this secret key, which we stored here, right? Now, after token is generated successfully, we need to store this inside cookie. So you can write res.cookie, and we want to provide cookie name to be, let me see. In our previous case, like when I showed you a demo, its name was auth cookie. So let's keep it same. So we can write auth cookie, and the value will be, this token which we generated, right? Great. So let's save it. And after everything is done successfully, we want to send status 200 along with send message user logged in successfully. And we also need to send the user information, or maybe you can just simply send the access token, right? Because we don't want to show the whole user information. That is also fine. So you can write access token colon token, right? So it should work fine. So let's see whether it is working fine or not. Great. So let's go to Postman, and if I try to log in, let's say this email does not exist. If I try to log in, it should say that user with this mail does not exist. So we have to create this user first, right? We have to create this user first using this Signup API. So earlier we created this user, right, with this email. So let's try to use this to log in. You can write this email over here, and let's say I type wrong password. So it should, okay, it is breaking. Let's see what is happening. Data and hash arguments required. Data and hash arguments required. Okay, let's see what is happening over here. Okay, it's breaking in the line. Let me see. 53 line. So what is 53 line? Okay, it's breaking over here. So it's not able to get this password. Okay, I got it. So basically, when we are trying to retrieve our user information, we are not able to fetch the authentication password value. So why it is happening? Because in our schema, as you can see, we wrote select colon false. So that means by default, we won't be able to access all these values, right? So what you can do is you can write here, when you're fetching the user information, you need to write select. Inside this inverted comma, you can write plus authentication dot password. Okay, so with this line of code, what will happen is you will be able to access authentication password, and yeah, this will work now. You got it, right? Why this was not working? Because this was coming empty, and this was coming empty because we were not able to fetch this because of this line of code, right? So that's why we need to explicitly mention that we want to get this information as well when we are retrieving user information, right? So now this will work. Let's see. So if I try to click on send, it should say that invalid credentials. Why? Because password is wrong. So let's try to provide a correct password. It was 123456, I believe. If I click on send, as you can see, user was logged in successfully and we got a access token. So it should be set in my cookies as well. In the response cookie, as you can see, I'm getting this auth cookie, and it should also be set over here inside this cookie. So this value will be also same. Great. One small change which we need to do is, as you can see, this cookie is not HTTP only, right? So we can make this true as well. So what is the advantage of making this cookie HTTP only? So I researched on this topic. It will help you as well, you know, in interviews, or maybe it's just not for knowledge purpose. It's really good. So basically, whenever you make this cookie HTTP only, what's the advantage of this? That it will not be accessible. It will not be accessible via JavaScript, or you can say it will not be accessible in your client. Only server will be able to access your cookie, right? So that gives you an advantage if, let's say, someone is maliciously inserting some scripts in your website, right? He won't be able to access this cookie, right? He won't be able to attack your website. So that's the advantage of making this cookie HTTP only. So in your code, inside this line, what you can do is you can provide one object, and here you can write HTTP only to true. So let's test this. If I click on send button again, as you can see, this becomes true. So the advantage of this is that attacker will not be able to access this cookie via script or via client side, right? So that's the advantage. Great. So that means you are also able to log in successfully. Let's create logout feature. So this logout feature, what it will do is it will basically make this cookie empty, right? So let's do that. So inside this, what you can do is you can write res dot cookie, and you can make this cookie empty. You can just simply copy this and you can make this empty like this, and here you can send return dot res dot status 200 dot send message user logged out successfully. Great. So let's try to test this as well. So if I make a post request on this API route, if I click on send, as you can see, user logged out successfully, and in cookie also you will see we don't have any value over here, and here also you can verify that you don't have any cookie over here. So that means user was able to log out successfully. And if I log in again, it will give me a new access token, and in your cookie you will be able to see you have a new access token. Great. So logout feature is also working fine. Now we are going to utilize this cookie to make a protected route request in your application, like in several applications, or let's say you can take example of Facebook or Twitter. Let's say you logged in, right? So only after login you are able to retrieve your tweets, right? You don't want other people to retrieve your tweets, or maybe you don't want other people to retrieve your profile information, right? So basically, how do we make a particular API route protected? By protected, I mean, how do we make sure that the particular API route is only called by you and you're only able to access the response? Other people should not be able to access the response. So for that, we are going to utilize cookie. So we are going to make one protected API route, and it's going to give us all the users information, like all the users which are registered in MongoDB database, right? So, and we only want to allow this API to be called by people or by user who are logged in. So how do we make sure that only logged in user are able to call this API? We are going to use cookie. So if a cookie is valid, okay, so let's say if I'm calling this API and I have a valid cookie over here, that means I am logged in. So then only this API should give me result, otherwise it should not give, right? So let's do that. So in VS Code, what I can do is I can go to my routes, and let's create one more route. You can write auth router dot get. I'm going to make a get request on, what's the name? It's get all users. It's going to call get all users function, which we haven't created yet. Let me save it. And inside my auth.ts, I'm going to create this function. So can I get all users? It will be asynchronous function. Again, it will be taking same parameters, right? Let me just copy that from this function. Great. So you can just paste it over here. And what it's going to do is it's going to fetch all the users. You can write const all users await user.find, right? So this line of code is going to give you all the users which are registered in MongoDB database. And now I just want to return res.status 200.send all users, right? So let's test this. We are getting some error, I believe. Okay, we haven't imported it, so we can press Control space. It's okay. We haven't exported it as well, so you can write get all users. Great. So let's import it here in our routes file. So you can type Control space. It'll automatically be imported. Great. So all our errors gone. So let's test this API route. So if I click on get all users, if I hit send over here, in my body, okay, in response you can see I'm getting all the users information, right? Let's create a new user. Its name will be Atharth1, and after user account is created, and if I click on get all users API route again, I should be able to see this in my response, right? So this API is working fine. But let's do one thing. Let me delete this cookie, and if I make a request again I'm able to make this request, but we don't want that. We only want logged in users to basically make a request to this API route. So how do we make it protected? So for that we are going to use middleware. So inside middleware's directory, let's create one file. It will be validate access token, or you can give it name validate cookie.ts, right? Import express from express, and we will create one function over here. You can export it. Export const, its name will be validate cookie. It's going to take request express dot request response express dot response and next, which is going to be express dot next function. Great. So the first thing which we need to do is we need to check if cookie present or not. So you can write const cookie inside curly braces, and we are going to fetch it from request.cookies. Okay, you don't have to write curly braces because this will not be an object, I believe. Okay, so for now let's just log it to the console whether we are able to access our cookie or not. So how do we use this middleware? Okay, also we forgot to call the next function. So whenever you are creating a middleware function, always make sure that in last you're calling the next function, right? So how do we use this middleware? You can go back to your authentication route file, and here before this you can type in validate cookie, comma, okay, it's automatically imported. So basically whenever you make request to this route, first it will validate whether cookie is present or not, and after that you will get all the users information, right? So for now we are just only printing the cookie to check whether we are able to receive the cookie or not. So if I let me log in first. So if I log in, it's going to set cookie over here, as you can see, right? So if I click on login API, sorry, not login API, if I click on get all users API, I should be able to see the cookie over here. As you can see, cookie is coming undefined. So for this purpose, we are going to use cookie parser. So Express server is not able to parse the cookie by default. So for that, we need to use the cookie parser library. You can go back to your starting script file, and here you need to import cookie parser from cookie parser library. And after this line, you can write app.use cookie parser like this. So using this, you will be able to parse the cookie. Let's see, if I click on send button again, you should be able to see your cookie. As you can see, we are able to get the cookie, right? Great. So inside my middleware, after receiving cookie, what I need to do is I need to check whether this cookie has a valid value or not, right? So if cookie dot auth cookie, right? If let's say if it does not exist, I would return res.status 401.send message that user is not authorized. Login first, right? Great. Okay, so this is basically validating that whether this auth cookie has some value or not, right? But also let's imagine that it contains a value. How do we validate whether this access token is valid or not? So for that, what we can do is we need to make a request to our MongoDB database to check whether this access token exists for any user or not. So for that, what we can do is const user exists with access token await. Okay, we need to make this function asynchronous. You can write await. Okay, we also need to import the user. You can write import user from the schemas user, right? So you can write await user dot find one, and here you can write authentication dot access token, right? Let me verify this is the correct name or not. Inside my schema, okay, name is correct. So it should be equal to cookie dot auth cookie. Okay, so if I'm getting the user, if user exists, so if user exists, that means everything goes well. But if user does not exist, I need to send this message again. That means cookie is invalid. So I'll again send the same message, and if this also goes fine, we can move to the function which is going to return us all the users, right? So this is going to be the logic for our middleware. So you can see the first task it is doing, it is checking whether you have a valid cookie or not, if you have any value inside this cookie or not. Okay, if you don't have, it's going to send this message that user is not authorized. And let's say if you have some value inside it, we are going to validate it by checking in our database whether this access token exists for some user or not. Okay, if it does not exist, again that means user is not authorized, login first, right? So let's save it and let's try to run our get all users function. So let me delete the cookie. So we don't have any cookie, so it should throw some error, right? So if I click on send, as you can see, user is not authorized, login first, right? So let me log in. If I log in, my new cookie will be set, as you can see. Now I should be able to make this request. If I click on send, again it's saying user is not authorized. That means we did some mistake over here. Let's see what was the mistake. Let me also check in our MongoDB database whether we have a access token over here or not. So if I refresh, inside my collection, access token should be there for this user. Okay, as you can see, access token is not over here in the collection. So that means we did one mistake. In our login API, inside this function, we didn't set access token in the database. Okay, so after setting the cookie, we also need to store this information in our database, right? So you can write, what was the name? Its name was user exist. Okay, so you can write user exist dot authentication dot access token equal to, you can remove this. You can set this to new token which you created, right? It's saying that it is possibly undefined. Okay, that seems fair. So you can enclose this inside a if condition. So if user exists dot authentication is present, we need to set the access token inside this model, and you can write await user exist dot save. Okay, so with this 3 line of code, what we're doing is we are basically setting the access token inside the authentication object inside the user exists object. And after you have done this, we need to save this so that it goes in our MongoDB database, right? So yeah, let's test this. If I click on login API, it's going to give us new access token, and also here you should be able to see the access token. So if I click refresh, you should be able to see this access token over here as well. As you can see, access token is coming. So that means this will also work fine. Invalidate cookie, earlier we were not able to do this because we were not having an access token in database. Now it should work fine. So if I click on get all users API, earlier we were getting user is not authorized, but now this time we will not be getting this. If I click on send button, as you can see, we are getting all the users information in the response. Let's say if I provide an invalid value, let's say I delete something in this cookie, and if I save it, that means our cookie is invalid, right? So we should not be able to make this request. As you can see, user is not authorized, login first. Let me log in again, and after user logs in successfully, you should be able to make this request, right? So let me log out as well. So if I log out, user logs out successfully, and if I make a request to this API, protected API again, you would not be able to make this request. As you can see, user is not authorized, login first. So in this way, you can implement authentication using, Nodejs, Express, MongoDB, Mongoose library, which we just did in this video. I hope this video was useful, and this video was like you learned something from this video. The major motivation of this video was to teach how you can create authentication from scratch and how you can utilize cookies, right? So yeah, this was all about the authentication, and I hope you like this video. Do share this video, do subscribe my channel for for more videos like this. Thank you for watching this video, and yeah, do share this video. Thanks.